Good day to everyone. Our topic for today is Article 247 of the Revised Penal Code, which is death or physical injuries inflicted under exceptional circumstances. Question: what if you catch your wife in the act of having sexual intercourse with another man, and in an act of passionate rage, you kill your wife in the process? Will you be criminally liable for parricide? The answer to this question is found in Article 247 of the Revised Penal Code, which states, Article 247, any legally married person who, having surprised his spouse in the act of committing sexual intercourse with another person, shall kill any of them or both of them in the act or immediately thereafter, or shall inflict upon them any serious physical injury, shall suffer the penalty of distierro. If he shall inflict upon them physical injuries of any other kind, he shall be exempt from punishment. These rules shall be applicable under the same circumstances to parents with respect to their daughters under 18 years of age and their seducers, while the daughters are living with their parents. Any person who shall promote or facilitate the prostitution of his wife or daughter, or shall otherwise have consented to the infidelity of the other spouse, shall not be entitled to the benefits of this article. So ito yung provision ng Article 247. Now, in the succeeding slides, we will discuss each of the elements under Article 247. What are then the elements of Article 247? This is the first element. A legally married person catches or surprises his or her spouse in the act of having sexual intercourse with another. Take note here that the spouses must be legally married. Therefore, the article will not apply to live-in couples and or couples in a mere boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Now, what does the phrase having surprised his spouse in the act of committing sexual intercourse with another person mean? To surprise means to suddenly appear unexpectedly or without warning. Here, the surprising must be at the very moment the sexual intercourse is taking place. Hence, the first element is not complied with if the sexual intercourse has not yet taken place. Hindi pa nangyayari. Is only about to take place. Mangyayari pa lang. Or had already taken place. Nangyari na. Take note of that. Now, let us go through some examples. First example. X saw his wife sleeping naked with her paramour. Enraged, X killed his wife and seriously injured her paramour. Is X criminally liable? The answer is yes, because X did not surprise them in the act of having sexual intercourse. Another example. X caught his wife talking and cuddling with her paramour inside the room of a motel. Enraged, X killed his wife and seriously injured her paramour. Question: is X criminally liable? Yes, because X did not surprise them in the act of having sexual intercourse. Another example. Y caught her husband on top of his mistress and about to insert his penis inside her vagina. Enraged, Y killed her husband and seriously injured his mistress. Question: Is Y, the wife, criminally liable? The answer is yes, because Y did not surprise them in the act of having sexual intercourse. Another example: just as the husband had finished the sexual act, Y, the wife, barged inside the room and saw her husband rising up from bed. Enraged, Y killed her husband and seriously injured his mistress. Question: Is Y criminally liable? The answer is yes, because Y did not surprise them in the act of having sexual intercourse. Another example: Y saw her husband and his mistress both naked and making out in what appears to be a prelude to sexual intercourse. Enraged, Y killed her husband and seriously injured his mistress. Question: Is Y criminally liable? The answer is still a yes, because Y did not surprise them in the act of having sexual intercourse. However, it is not necessary that the enraged or aggrieved spouse should literally see the penis penetrating the vagina. It is enough that the aggrieved spouse sees the man in a push and pull motion or under circumstances showing that sexual intercourse is being committed. But Justice Laurel, in a dissenting opinion, made the following observation. He said, "Must the offended spouse wait until the very physical act of sexual intercourse takes place? This interpretation is contrary to the reason and purpose of the law." Justice Laurel here has a point. Kasi makita mo lang yung asawa mo na nasa loob ng motel kasama ang ibang lalaki, ma-enrage ka na talaga. Oftentimes, hindi mo na talaga mapigilan yung galit mo na makita mo yung asawa mo na may kasamang ibang lalaki. But unfortunately, that is only a dissenting opinion. It is not the main or prevailing opinion of the Supreme Court. Ang Supreme Court, or on the part of the Supreme Court, kailangan talaga na yung surprising must be at the very moment the sexual intercourse is taking place. Now, let's go to the second element. Such legally married person kills or seriously injures any or both of them in the act or immediately thereafter. Now, the killing or the inflicting of serious physical injuries must be either during the act of sexual intercourse or immediately after surprising them in the act of sexual intercourse. Question: What does the phrase immediately thereafter mean? It means that the discovery, escape, pursuit, and the killing or the inflicting of serious physical injury must all form part of one continuous act. Now, if a period of time had elapsed between the discovery and the killing or inflicting of serious physical injury, the accused can still avail of the benefit of Article 247, provided that the killing or the inflicting of serious physical injury was the result of the accused's continuous pursuit of the victim. Also, The death caused must be the proximate result of the outrage overwhelming the accused after chancing upon his or her spouse. But the killing should be actually motivated by the same blind impulse and must not be influenced by external factors. The killing, according to the case of People versus Abarca, must be the direct byproduct of the accused's rage. Examples. X saw his wife in the act of sexual intercourse with his neighbor Z. The latter, however, was able to run and escape. Enraged, X chased Z but could no longer find him. X then returned to his house where he saw his wife kneeling and asking for forgiveness, but X nevertheless hacked her to death. Here, X can still avail of the benefit of Article 247 because the killing was motivated by the same blind impulse, even if the killing was not done while they were having sexual intercourse. Another example. X saw his wife in the act of sexual intercourse with his neighbor Z. Z, however, was able to run away and escape. Enraged, X chased Z but lost him. After about 2 hours of searching, X found Z, who was trying to catch a bus ride at the terminal, and there shot him to death. Here, X can still avail of the benefit of Article 247 because the killing was the result of the accused's continuous pursuit of the victim. Another example. X saw his wife in the act of sexual intercourse with his neighbor Z. The latter, however, was able to run and escape. Enraged, X chased Z but lost him. Futile in his search, X then returned home. The following day, X saw Z at the jeepney terminal and there shot him to death. Here, X can no longer avail of the benefit of Article 247 because the killing was no longer the result of accused's continuous pursuit of the victim. And this is so even if X claims that he was motivated by the same blind impulse. Another example. X abandoned his wife to live with his mistress in an undisclosed location. After months of searching for her husband, X found them staying in a small apartment. Peeping through a hole into the room, she saw her husband X having sexual intercourse with his mistress. When X and his mistress came out of the apartment, she shot them to death. Here, even if X and Y were already living separately, it will not militate against the fact that the death caused is still the proximate result of the outrage overwhelming the accused upon seeing her husband having sexual intercourse with another woman. Third element. The husband has not promoted or facilitated the prostitution of his wife, nor has the spouse consented to the infidelity of the other spouse. Examples. Spouses X and Y agreed to separate and allow each other to have an affair with another man or woman, as the case may be. Thereafter, X, the husband, realized that he still loved Y, and so he went to visit Y at her apartment. Unfortunately, X catches his wife Y in an act of sexual intercourse with her boyfriend. Enraged, X killed Y. Here, X is guilty of parricide. He can no longer benefit from Article 247 because he had already consented to the infidelity of his wife. Another example, X offered his wife to his friend Y in exchange for 10,000 pesos. Here, X loses the benefit of Article 247. Why? Because he promoted the prostitution of his wife. Now, what is this benefit of Article 247? Article 247 should not be considered a felony. Please take note of that because Article 247 does not define a crime. Hindi po krimen ang nakapaloob sa Article 247. Instead, Article 247 is an exemption from punishment because a person who would otherwise be criminally liable for the crime of parricide or murder or homicide or serious physical injury as the case may be is punished only with distierro. And although distierro or banishment is by itself a penalty, however, for purposes of Article 247, it is merely imposed more for the protection of the accused than a punishment. And take note of this, where only slight or less serious physical injuries are inflicted, the offender is literally exempted from punishment. Thus, in effect, Article 247 amounts to an exempting circumstance, for even where death or serious physical injuries is inflicted, the penalty is so greatly lowered as to result to no punishment at all. Also, the elements in Article 247 apply to parents with respect to their daughters who are under 18 years old and living with them. Let us go through some examples. X saw his 17-year-old daughter having sex with her 26-year-old boyfriend. Enraged, X inflicted serious physical injuries on both his daughter and her seducer. Here, X will only be meted with the penalty of distierro because he can, under this example, still avail of the benefit of Article 247. Another example, X saw his 17-year-old daughter having sex with her 17-year-old boyfriend. Puro minors, ha? Enraged, X inflicted serious physical injuries on both his daughter and her 17-year-old boyfriend. Here, even if the boyfriend is only 17 years old, he will still be considered as a seducer for the purpose of Article 247. And of course, since the example complies with the elements of Article 247, X will only be meted with the penalty of distierro. Another example, X decided to make a surprise visit to her 17-year-old daughter, who was staying in a boarding house near the school where she studies. There, he saw his daughter having sex with her 26-year-old boyfriend. Enraged, he inflicted serious physical injuries on both his daughter and her seducer. Question: will X still be entitled to the benefit of Article 247? The answer is no more. Why? Because here X will be criminally liable because at the time of the infliction of the injuries, his daughter was not living with them. Diba? If you can notice, the daughter was already staying in a boarding house. She was no longer living with her parents. Question: what if in the course of shooting the unfaithful spouse and his mistress or her paramour, another person is killed or seriously injured in the process? Will there be criminal liability for such death or injury? The general rule is that a person who commits a felony is liable for all the consequences of his act. However, since inflicting death or injury under exceptional circumstances is not considered a felony, it follows therefore that there is likewise no criminal liability for homicide or physical injury to that other person who was killed in the process. However, there may be criminal liability for reckless imprudence resulting in homicide or serious physical injury if there was negligence on the part of the spouse who killed or injured his or her unfaithful spouse and their lovers.